Funeral homes are built for the dead, but before sunrise in Briar Glen, a German shepherd breaks into one because someone inside is still breathing. Rain whispers across the black windows of Hensley and Sons funeral home, turning the quiet street into a ribbon of reflected amber light. The town sleeps beneath a cold November sky. Storefronts are dark. Porch flags hang heavy with water. Somewhere beyond the courthouse, a church bell marks 4 in the morning, each note fading into the mist before the next one arrives. Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer stands inside the funeral home with one hand wrapped around the leather collar of his K-9 partner, Atlas. Daniel is 38, tall and broad-shouldered, with close-cut light brown hair and the pale, weathered face of a man who has spent too many years beneath foreign suns. His blue-gray eyes move across the hallway, measuring doors, shadows, and distances out of habit. Water runs from the shoulders of his field jacket. A thin scar rests near his right temple, almost hidden beneath the damp edge of his hair. He does not notice the cold. He notices Atlas. The 6-year-old German shepherd stands rigid beside him, his sable coat darkened by rain, his ears pointed toward a steel door at the far end of the corridor. He is not barking. That is what frightens Daniel. Atlas barks when he needs men to move. He growls when danger is close. But when he becomes this still, when his amber eyes narrow and his breathing nearly stops, he has found something that requires silence. Behind them, rain slips through a broken pane in the side entrance, tapping softly against the polished floor. A small alarm panel flashes red near the reception desk, though no siren sounds. The building smells of lilies, candle wax, furniture polish, and the faint medicinal chill drifting from the rooms beyond the steel door. Framed photographs line the cream-colored walls. Smiling families, silver-haired couples, young Marines in dress blues, faces caught in brighter moments, before grief brought their names here. Daniel tightens his grip on Atlas's collar. Easy, he whispers. Atlas does not look at him. His nose lifts by half an inch. His front paw slides forward. Then the sound comes again. 3 knocks. Soft. Measured. Almost too faint to be real. Daniel freezes. The first knock could be a pipe settling in the cold. The second could be rain striking metal. But the third carries intention. A pause follows, long enough for the entire building to seem as though it is holding its breath. Daniel looks toward the steel door. There is no window in it, only a narrow keypad and a brass plate reading authorized personnel only. Hello. His voice travels down the hallway and disappears into the walls. No answer comes. Atlas leans against the collar, not pulling hard, only insisting. Daniel takes one step forward. The dog moves with him. Their boots and paws make almost no sound on the stone floor. On the reception counter, a vase of white lilies trembles as the heating system shuts off. The low hum that has filled the building fades away. Silence settles deeper. Daniel hears the second hand of a clock. He hears rainwater dripping from his sleeve. He hears Atlas inhale beneath the door. Then he hears 2 more knocks. A pause. 3 again. Daniel's hand loosens from the collar. His heart gives one hard beat against his ribs. He knows that rhythm. 3, 2, 3. Years earlier, Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Blake taught it to every Marine in their unit. A signal for men trapped where radios failed and voices could not carry. 3 knocks to say I am here. 2 to say I am hurt. 3 more to say do not leave. Daniel stares at the steel door. Aaron Blake is supposed to be dead. His closed casket funeral is scheduled for 10 o'clock that morning, right here in this building. Daniel has the man's dog tags in his jacket pocket, wrapped in a clean white handkerchief because he cannot bear to hear them strike together. He came to deliver them before Aaron's family arrived. He came before dawn because grief is easier when no one is watching. Atlas brought him through the side entrance before he ever reached the front steps. The dog had begun scratching at the Jeep door from nearly 100 feet away, whining once, low in his throat, then lunging toward the funeral home the moment Daniel opened it. He crossed the wet lawn, leaped against the narrow glass pane beside the service entrance, and forced his way through when the old latch gave loose. Now Atlas stands before the restricted room as though every step has led him to this exact place. Daniel reaches for the handle. Locked. He studies the keypad, then the hinges. Aaron, he calls, louder this time. From somewhere beyond the steel comes a sound so thin it might be breath moving through cloth. Atlas presses his muzzle to the gap beneath the door. His tail lowers. His ears fold back for the first time. Daniel pulls the dog tags from his pocket. Cold metal rests in his palm. One tag bears Aaron Blake's name, blood type, and service number. The other carries a small dent from a training accident at Camp Lejeune, where Aaron once laughed and said the tag had more sense than most lieutenants. Daniel brings it close to the door. Atlas turns, touches the tag with his nose, then places one paw against the steel. "You smell him," Daniel says. It is not a question. Somewhere near the front of the building, a floorboard creaks. Daniel looks over his shoulder. No one appears. The red alarm light continues to blink. Outside, thunder rolls far beyond the pines. The overhead lamps flicker once, throwing the hallway into pale shadow, then return. Daniel faces the door again. His hand closes around the handle. "Hold on," he says, unsure whether he is speaking to Atlas, to Aaron, or to the part of himself that has stopped believing he can reach anyone in time. The lights flicker a second time. Atlas gives one sharp bark. Then the entire funeral home goes dark. 18 hours earlier, Daniel Mercer is standing alone in his kitchen when the call arrives, telling him Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Blake did not survive the night. 18 hours earlier, Daniel Mercer stands alone in the narrow kitchen of his rented house outside Briar Glen, watching rain gather against the window above the sink. The afternoon light is already fading, thin and gray across the pine trees. A half-finished cup of coffee rests beside an unopened envelope from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Atlas lies near the back door with his head on his paws, listening to the steady ticking of the wall clock. The house is clean, orderly, and almost silent, the kind of silence Daniel once believed he wanted. Now it feels too much like an empty room after everyone else has gone home. His phone rings at 4:17. The number belongs to First Sergeant Michael Reeves from Camp Lejeune. Daniel looks at the screen for 2 full rings before answering. "Mercer." There is a pause on the other end. Not a long one, but long enough. Men who have served together learn to hear bad news before the words arrive. "Daniel," Reeves says, his voice low. "It is Aaron." Daniel looks toward Atlas. The dog lifts his head. "What happened?" "There was a medical transport incident outside Fayetteville last night. Aaron was being transferred after a routine evaluation. The vehicle left the highway during the storm. They got him to St. Matthews, but he did not make it through the night." The kitchen seems to narrow around Daniel. Rain taps the glass. The refrigerator motor clicks off. Somewhere beyond the house, a truck passes along the wet county road, tires whispering against pavement. Daniel says nothing. Reeves continues carefully. "The family asked for a closed service. Hensley and Sons is handling everything. Tomorrow at 10. Daniel lowers his eyes to the coffee. A faint ring of brown has dried around the inside of the cup. "Who identified him?" "The hospital confirmed the paperwork. His sister is flying in tonight." Another pause. "I am sorry, brother." Daniel ends the call without remembering what he says. For several seconds, he remains beside the counter with the phone still pressed to his ear. Atlas rises and walks toward him, slow and watchful. The German shepherd touches his nose to Daniel's wrist. Daniel turns away. Grief is not new to him. It has followed him through airports, hospital corridors, retirement ceremonies, and sleepless mornings. He knows how it enters a room without opening a door. Aaron Blake, however, was not supposed to become another name carried in silence. Aaron had been the man who taught Daniel that courage was often quieter than people imagined. It was not shouting over fear. It was checking on a young Marine after everyone else had gone to bed. It was staying beside a wounded dog until sunrise. It was calling once a month after retirement and never accepting the answer, "I am fine," without waiting for the truth. Daniel opens the drawer beside the stove and removes a small wooden box. Inside rests a folded white handkerchief and 2 spare identification tags Aaron had left with him 3 months earlier. Aaron had laughed when Daniel asked why he did not keep them himself. "Because you never lose anything," he had said. "Except sleep." Daniel places the tags on the counter. The metal catches the weak kitchen light. Atlas sees them and steps closer. His ears rise. Daniel unfolds the handkerchief and sets the tags in the center, but before he can wrap them, Atlas presses his nose against the metal. He inhales once, then again. A low sound forms in his chest. It is not a growl. It is not a whine. It is the uncertain sound he makes when a familiar scent does not belong where he finds it. "You remember him," Daniel says. Atlas lifts his head and looks toward the back door. Daniel waits. The dog returns to the tags, smells them once more, then walks to Aaron's field jacket hanging from a hook near the mudroom. The jacket arrived that morning in a sealed garment bag, delivered with Aaron's personal effects before anyone had called Daniel. He had not opened it. Now Atlas sits beneath it, staring upward. Daniel takes the jacket down and unzips the bag. The familiar olive fabric falls into his hands. The right cuff is worn. A small patch near the shoulder has been repaired with dark green thread. Daniel remembers Aaron sewing it himself during a training weekend and insisting the uneven stitches gave it character. Atlas pushes his muzzle into the sleeve. His breathing changes. Faster, more focused. He moves from the cuff to the collar, then to the lower pocket. Daniel kneels beside him. The jacket carries the clean, sharp scent of hospital disinfectant. Beneath it lies engine oil, cold rain, and the faint cedar soap Aaron always used. Daniel expects something else. Smoke. Roadside dirt. The stale chemical odor that clings to fabric after a vehicle accident. None of it is there. Atlas suddenly backs away. He turns toward the door and scratches once against the wood. What is it? Daniel asks. Atlas scratches again. Then he looks at Daniel with the same fixed expression he used during search drills when the trail was fresh and the handler was too slow to understand. Daniel checks the garment bag. A paper label is stapled near the zipper. Hensley and Sons Funeral Home. Received at 11:42 in the morning. That makes no sense. Reeves said Aaron died during the night. The jacket should have gone from the hospital to the family, not directly to a funeral home before official notification reached Daniel. He calls the number printed on the label. A man answers after 6 rings. Hensley and Sons. This is Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer. I am calling about Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Blake. Silence. Then a careful voice says, Yes, sir. The service is tomorrow morning. I received one of his personal items from your facility. I need to know who authorized the delivery. I am afraid I do not have that information in front of me. Then find it. The man clears his throat. Our office closes at 5, Sergeant. You may come by tomorrow before the service. The line disconnects. Daniel stares at the phone. Atlas remains beside the door, body tense, eyes fixed on the rain. Daniel looks at Aaron's jacket again. Near the inside collar, almost hidden beneath the fold, there is a narrow smear of silver wax, the kind used to seal refrigerated transport containers. Daniel rubs it between his fingers. Atlas steps forward and smells the mark. His tail stiffens. Then he gives one sharp bark toward the darkening road. Daniel wraps Aaron's tags in the white handkerchief, places them inside his jacket, and reaches for the keys. All right, he says. We are going to find out why a dead man's scent is still leading somewhere. Daniel does not drive straight to Hensley and Sons. The rain has thickened into silver sheets by the time he steps onto the porch, and the funeral home has already closed for the evening. He spends the next several hours doing what Marines are trained to do when instinct and paperwork disagree. He checks every detail twice. The medical transport left St. Matthew's Hospital shortly after midnight. The incident report places the vehicle nearly 40 miles west of Briar Glen. Aaron was declared dead before sunrise. Yet his field jacket reached the funeral home before noon, carrying no trace of smoke, roadside mud, or broken glass. Only disinfectant, engine oil, cedar soap, and that thin smear of silver sealing wax. At 11:30 that night, Daniel sits at his kitchen table beneath a single yellow lamp. Aaron's jacket spread before him like a map. Atlas circles the room without settling. Every few minutes, the German Shepherd returns to the collar, draws in the scent, then walks to the back door. Daniel calls St. Matthew's. A night clerk confirms Aaron's name was entered into the system, but she refuses to discuss anything else without family authorization. He calls the county transportation office. No one answers. He searches the public incident record and finds only 4 lines, each one too clean, too brief, as if the truth has been folded small enough to fit inside a file drawer. At 1:12 in the morning, Daniel notices a second label beneath the funeral home tag. Most of it has been torn away. What remains shows part of a route number and 3 letters printed in faded blue ink. North Coastal Veteran Transit. The name belongs to a private company that moves former service members between hospitals, rehabilitation centers, and assisted living facilities across eastern North Carolina. Daniel has heard Aaron mention it once. Not with anger, with concern. 2 weeks earlier, Aaron had called, and asked whether Daniel still knew anyone in the Inspector General's office. Daniel had been tired that night. Distracted, he told Aaron they could talk after Thanksgiving. Now the memory settles in his chest with the weight of a closed door. Atlas stops pacing and places his head against Daniel's knee. "I should have listened," Daniel says. The dog looks up at him without judgment. At 2:45, the storm begins to move east, leaving the town beneath low clouds and a cold mist. Daniel wraps the identification tags in the white handkerchief, places them in his inside pocket, and clips Atlas's leash to his collar. The drive into Briar Glen takes 20 minutes. Main Street is empty except for a delivery truck idling behind the grocery store and a patrol cruiser parked beneath the courthouse clock. Rainwater shines along the pavement. Red traffic lights change for no one. Hensley and Sons stands at the far end of Willow Avenue, a two-story brick building with white columns and dark windows. A small sign near the road bears the image of an oak tree above the words "Serving Families Since 1958. Daniel slows the Jeep nearly 100 feet from the entrance. Atlas rises in the back seat. His ears point forward. His nose lifts toward the narrow opening in the window. Then his entire body changes. The calm disappears. His paws strike the door. Once. Twice. Daniel pulls into the empty parking lot. "Wait." Atlas lets out a low, urgent whine. It is a sound Daniel has heard only during live searches, when every passing second matters. He opens the door, and Atlas surges into the rain. The leash slips through Daniel's wet hand before he can close his grip. "Atlas." The dog crosses the lawn without hesitation, ignoring the front entrance. He rounds the east side of the building, nose close to the ground, following a scent hidden beneath rain, wet grass, and the sweet odor of fallen pine needles. Daniel runs after him. Behind the funeral home, a paved service lane leads to two garage doors and a narrow side entrance. A black transport van sits beneath a metal awning. Its engine is cold, but drops of water still slide from the wheel wells. Atlas circles the rear bumper, smells the lower edge of the door, then jerks his head toward the building. Daniel notices fresh tire tracks in the thin mud beside the pavement. Someone has arrived recently. Atlas reaches the side entrance and rises on his hind legs. His front paws strike the narrow glass pane. "Easy." Daniel catches the leash, but the dog pulls with a strength born from certainty. Through the glass, the hallway is dark. Nothing moves. Daniel tries the handle. Locked. Atlas presses his nose to the lower corner of the door, inhales, then gives one sharp bark. The old wooden frame shutters. Daniel looks toward the transport van. A small, silver seal lies broken near the rear tire. It matches the wax on Aaron's jacket. Before Daniel can reach for it, a light flickers inside the building. Not in the front office. Farther back, a pale rectangle appears at the end of the service hall, then disappears. Atlas sees it. He lunges once more. The weakened latch tears free, the glass cracks inward, and the door opens 3 inches into the darkness. Cold air slips through the gap, carrying lilies, polished wood, and something Atlas recognizes immediately. The dog lowers his head and pulls Daniel inside. He does not turn toward the chapel where Aaron's closed casket is supposed to be waiting. He turns the other way, toward a steel door beyond the unlit corridor, following the scent of a man everyone has already begun to mourn. The corridor receives them with a coldness that does not belong to the weather outside. Daniel keeps one hand near Atlas's collar as they move past a row of framed memorial cards and a narrow table holding an unlit candle. The floor beneath their feet is polished stone, smooth enough to reflect the weak red pulse of the alarm panel near the service entrance. Atlas does not slow. His nose remains low, tracing a path no human eye can see. He passes the open doorway of a preparation room, ignores a linen cart, and stops only when the hallway divides. To the left, soft light spills from the chapel. To the right, darkness gathers around the steel door. Atlas turns right. That is far enough. The voice comes from behind them. Daniel pivots. A man in his early 60s stands near the chapel entrance wearing charcoal slacks, a white shirt, and a dark vest buttoned carefully over a narrow frame. His silver hair is combed back, and his face carries the tired dignity of someone who has spent a lifetime speaking softly around grief. One hand grips a ring of keys. The other holds a small flashlight. "You broke into my building," he says. "The door gave way," Daniel replies. "My dog caught a scent." The man glances at Atlas. then at the shattered pane near the end of the corridor. Dogs catch many scents in a funeral home. Not this dog. Daniel's tone remains calm, but it leaves no room for dismissal. Walter Hensley? The man's expression changes by the smallest measure. Yes. Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer. I called about Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Blake. Walter looks toward the chapel. The service is at 10. I know. Then you should come back with the family. Atlas lifts his head. His ears turn toward the steel door. Walter notices. The keys in his hand make a faint sound against one another. That area is restricted, he says. Daniel studies him. Who delivered Aaron here? A licensed transport company. Which one? North Coastal Veteran Transit. At what time? Walter's eyes move to the floor, then back to Daniel. Shortly after 2 this morning. The answer comes too quickly. Daniel steps closer to the chapel. Inside, rows of empty chairs face a closed mahogany casket beneath a brass cross. White lilies surround it in careful circles. An American flag rests folded on a table beside the front row, waiting for the honor guard. Everything is prepared. Everything is quiet. Atlas enters behind Daniel, walks to within 6 feet of the casket, and stops. He does not smell the base. He does not circle it. He does not lower his head the way he has done beside fallen handlers during memorial ceremonies. Instead, he turns away. Walter watches the dog with growing unease. Daniel reaches into his jacket and removes the handkerchief holding Aaron's identification tags. Atlas smells them once, then looks back toward the restricted hallway. He knows Aaron's scent, Daniel says. And he is telling me Aaron is not in that room. Walter's jaw tightens. The casket is closed at the family's request. Who identified him? The hospital sent confirmation. That is not what I asked. Before Walter can answer, blue light moves across the chapel windows. A patrol cruiser turns into the parking lot and stops near the damaged side entrance. Moments later, Deputy Rebecca Shaw steps inside wearing a rain-darkened uniform jacket, her brown hair pulled into a practical knot. She is 36, steady-eyed, and alert without appearing alarmed. Her gaze travels from the broken glass to Daniel, then to Atlas. The silent alarm reached dispatch, she says. Someone. Want to explain why I am standing in a funeral home before sunrise? Walter starts first. He forced his way inside. My K-9 alerted on the building, Daniel says. Rebecca looks at the steel door, then at the closed casket. Alerted to what? A living scent. The words settle heavily between them. Walter exhales through his nose. That is impossible. Atlas gives a low whine. Rebecca walks to the reception desk and asks for the intake record. Walter hesitates before unlocking a drawer. He removes a folder and places it beneath the desk lamp. The first page lists Aaron Blake's name, date of birth, service history, and scheduled funeral time. Rebecca reads in silence. Daniel watches her eyes stop near the bottom. The transport arrival is listed at 2:17, she says. That is correct, Walter replies. Rebecca turns the page. Then why does your refrigeration access log show the rear chamber opening at 3:04? Walter's face loses color. The system records errors during storms. Who was here at 3:04? No one. Rebecca raises her eyes. A locked chamber opened itself. Walter says nothing. Atlas returns to the steel door and presses his nose against the gap beneath it. Daniel moves beside him. From the chapel, the clock marks 4 with a soft mechanical click. Rebecca closes the folder. Mr. Hensley, I need you to open the casket. Walter grips the desk. I cannot do that without the family. Then call them. You do not understand. Daniel turns toward him. Help me understand. Walter looks past Daniel, not at the casket, but toward the dark service hall where Atlas now stands completely still. The man who arrived, he says quietly, was already wearing Gunnery Sergeant Blake's identification. Daniel's hand closes around the dog tags in his palm. Then open the casket, he says. Walter does not move. Behind the steel door, something makes one faint scraping sound, then stops. For one suspended second, no one moves. The scraping sound is so faint that Rebecca might have mistaken it for rain moving through the gutters, but Atlas does not. His head lifts. His eyes fix on the steel door. Daniel sees the muscles along the dog's shoulders tighten beneath the wet sable coat. Walter reaches toward the ring of keys at his belt, then stops as if the motion itself has betrayed him. Open the casket first, Rebecca says. Her voice is calm, but it has hardened. Walter looks toward the chapel. Deputy, there are procedures. There are also questions about identity, access logs, and a sound coming from a restricted room. She holds out her hand. The key. Walter does not give it to her. Instead, he walks into the chapel with the slow care of a man approaching something he has spent hours trying not to see. Daniel follows, Atlas close at his side. The lilies smell stronger here, sweet enough to make the air feel heavy. Rain traces narrow paths down the tall windows. At the front of the room, the mahogany casket rests beneath warm recessed lights, its brass handles polished to a soft glow. A framed photograph of Aaron stands on an easel nearby. In it, he is smiling beneath a Carolina sky, one hand resting on Atlas's back during a retirement ceremony 2 summers earlier. The dog in the photograph looks toward Aaron. The dog in the chapel does not look at the casket at all. Walter places both hands on the lid. They tremble. The transport driver gave me sealed documents, he says. The hospital bracelet matched the name. The identification tags matched the record. I had no reason to question it. Daniel stands on the opposite side. You had enough reason to be afraid when Atlas reached that hallway. Walter closes his eyes briefly. At 3 a.m, I heard a noise from the rear chamber. I checked the system. One compartment showed an error. When I went back there, everything was quiet. Did you open it? Rebecca asks. Walter's silence answers for him. Daniel looks at the photograph of Aaron. Open this. Walter releases the latch at the foot of the casket, then the latch near the head. Each click seems too loud in the chapel. He raises the lid carefully. Daniel prepares himself for the face of the man who taught him how to survive silence. The face beneath the white interior lining belongs to a stranger. The man appears to be near 70, with silver hair combed neatly from his forehead, and deep lines around his closed eyes. There is no visible injury, only the stillness of someone whose final hours were quiet and unseen. He wears a clean dark suit provided by the funeral home. Around his neck rests a familiar chain. Aaron Blake's identification tags lie against the white shirt. Daniel does not breathe for a moment. Then he reaches forward and turns one tag between his fingers. The service number is Aaron's. The man is not. That is not Gunnery Sergeant Blake, he says. Walter grips the casket edge. I do not understand. Rebecca steps closer, studying the man's features without touching him. You said the hospital confirmed the identity. They sent the paperwork electronically. The driver brought the personal effects. Did you see a photograph? No, fingerprints. No, Walter's voice has become smaller. The bracelet and tags were enough. Daniel looks at the stranger. A life reduced to another man's name. Somewhere, perhaps, someone is waiting for this man without knowing where he has gone. Atlas finally approaches the casket. He smells the polished wood, then the lower edge of the lining. His ears remain neutral. No recognition. No grief. Only certainty. He turns away and walks quickly toward the chapel doors. Atlas, Daniel says. The dog breaks into a run. His paws strike the stone floor in a sharp, steady rhythm as he disappears into the service corridor. Daniel follows, with Rebecca and Walter only a few steps behind. By the time they reach the hallway, Atlas is already near the steel door, but he is not focused on the gap beneath it. He is staring at the floor. A thin trail of water crosses the stone from the base of the door toward a utility drain. Daniel kneels and touches it. Cold. Fresh. Not rainwater from their clothes. This water has come from inside the restricted room. Atlas smells the trail, then raises his nose toward the keypad. Scrape this time. A breath. Weak, uneven, and unmistakably human. Daniel rises. There is someone in there. Walter fumbles through his keys. Metal strikes metal. He tries one, then another. Neither turns. The chamber key is missing, he whispers. Rebecca reaches for her radio, but before she can speak, the lights above them flicker. Atlas lowers his body. Daniel sees his reflection in the steel, pale and distorted beside the dog. Then 3 soft knocks come from the darkness beyond the door. A pause follows. 2 more knocks answer the silence. Atlas looks up at Daniel. The final 3 begin just as the power fails. Darkness does not fall all at once. It rolls through the funeral home in layers. First, the ceiling lights disappear. Then the green glow of the keypad dies. Last comes the faint hum of the refrigeration system, fading until the hallway is left with rain, breath, and the final knock from behind the steel door. Rebecca turns on her flashlight. The narrow beam cuts through the blackness and settles on Daniel's face. Walter stands beside the wall, keys shaking in his hand. Atlas does not move. His paw remains pressed against the door as if he can hold the person on the other side to this world by touch alone. Daniel places his palm against the cold metal. Aaron, he says. The name leaves his mouth as a whisper, but it carries everything he did not say during their last call. Regret. Hope. A promise arriving late. For several seconds, there is no answer. Then one soft knock comes from inside. Daniel closes his eyes. That is enough. He is alive. Rebecca speaks into her radio, giving the address and requesting emergency medical support, but static breaks across the channel. The storm has swallowed most of the signal. She moves toward the front of the building, searching for a clearer connection. Daniel turns to Walter. There has to be another way in. Walter raises the flashlight toward the door frame. The chamber opens electronically from this side. There is a manual release, but the key is supposed to stay in the office safe. You said it was missing. It was there yesterday. Daniel looks down the corridor. Who knew the code? Myself. My assistant. The night transport supervisor. Name. Walter hesitates. Travis Cole. The name lands with quiet weight. It is the same company Aaron asked about 2 weeks earlier. The same company printed beneath the torn label on the field jacket. Daniel crouches near the lower hinge and studies the door. Heavy steel. Reinforced frame. No exposed pins. It was designed to keep temperature in, not people out, but the result is the same. Atlas draws in a sharp breath and shifts his paw higher. Daniel hears a faint scrape from the other side. Stay with me, he says. He does not know whether Aaron can hear the words. He says them anyway. Walter returns from the office carrying a red emergency box. Inside are a pry bar, a battery lantern, and a ring of spare utility keys. None fit the lock. Rebecca comes back moments later. The call went through. Ambulance is 8 minutes out. Daniel looks at the steel. 8 minutes can be a lifetime when breathing is already thin. We do not wait. He takes the pry bar and wedges the flat end between the door and frame near the latch. The metal refuses to move. He adjusts his grip and tries again. Atlas steps back, but keeps his eyes on the narrow gap beneath the door. Walter brings the lantern closer. Its pale beam reveals fresh marks around the keypad and a thin black wire hanging loose beneath it. Rebecca kneels beside the panel. This was cut. Walter stares at the wire. That is why the manual release is not responding. Daniel pushes harder against the bar. The frame gives less than half an inch, then settles back. His shoulder burns from an old injury, but he does not let go. Aaron once carried him nearly half a mile after Daniel tore a ligament during mountain training. He had joked the entire way, saying Daniel weighed more than a supply truck. Now Daniel leans into the steel with both hands. Come on. Atlas barks once. Sharp. Urgent. From inside comes a weak sound. Not a knock this time, but the faint movement of someone trying to answer. Rebecca stands and studies the wall beside the door. What is behind this? Storage shelves, Walter says. Drywall on the chapel side. Then we do not need the door. They move quickly into a narrow utility room that shares the chamber wall. Boxes of candles and folded linens line metal shelves from floor to ceiling. Daniel pulls the nearest shelf away. Behind it, the painted drywall feels cold beneath his palm. Walter points to a section between two studs. The compartment should be directly there. Daniel takes the pry bar and presses it into the wall. The material cracks softly. No violence. Only dust, paper, and the dry smell of gypsum falling into the lantern light. He widens the opening carefully, piece by piece, until cold air spills through from the other side. Atlas pushes his nose toward the gap and whines. Daniel removes another section. The opening is still too narrow for a person, but wide enough for the flashlight beam. Rebecca angles the light through. Metal drawers line the opposite wall. The lowest one is partly open. A hand rests near its edge. Still. Pale. Then one finger moves. Aaron, Daniel says. The hand shifts again. Atlas presses his muzzle through the opening and releases a low sound, almost a cry. Daniel tears away the last section of drywall and climbs through first. The chamber is colder than winter air. His breath turns white before him. He crosses the floor in 3 steps and kneels beside the open compartment. The man inside wears a hospital gown beneath a gray transport blanket. His eyes are closed. His breathing is shallow, but present. Daniel places 2 fingers against his neck and feels a pulse. Weak. steady enough to fight for. Atlas slips through the opening behind him and places his nose against the man's hand. The fingers move once more, curling faintly into the dog's fur. Daniel looks down at the face everyone has already mourned. "You took your time," Aaron whispers. For a moment, Daniel does not answer. Relief is too large for words and too fragile to trust. He keeps 2 fingers against Aaron's neck, feeling the faint rhythm beneath cold skin, while Atlas presses closer, his body forming a warm barrier against the steel compartment. Aaron's eyelids lift only halfway. His face is pale beneath the emergency light, his lips dry, his breath shallow but stubborn. "Save your strength," Daniel says. Aaron tries to smile. "You always say that after you are late." The old humor is barely there, but it is enough to make something inside Daniel loosen. Rebecca climbs through the opening with the medical kit from her patrol cruiser. Walter remains on the other side, holding the lantern through the broken wall. His hands have stopped shaking. Now they hang heavy at his sides. "Ambulance is 3 minutes out," Rebecca says. She kneels beside Aaron and opens a thermal blanket. "We need to warm him slowly." Daniel helps slide the blanket around Aaron's shoulders without moving him more than necessary. Atlas lies along Aaron's side, chest against the man's arm, offering steady warmth. The ambulance pulls away beneath a sky beginning to turn from black to gray, its lights fading along Willow Avenue until only the rain remains. Daniel stands beneath the metal awning with Atlas beside him and Aaron's final words repeating in his mind. Under the floor, Rebecca turns toward the black transport van. Water slides from its roof in thin streams. The rear doors are locked, and the silver company lettering along the side reads North Coastal Veteran Transit. Walter watches from the service entrance, his face drawn and pale in the early light. "That van belongs to Travis Cole," he says. "He left it here after the delivery." Rebecca walks around the vehicle, taking photographs of the doors, license plate, and broken silver seal near the rear tire. "No one touches anything until I document it." Daniel nods. Though Atlas is already lowered 3 weeks later, morning sunlight rests softly over Briar Glen, warming the wet brick of Hensley and Sons and turning the repaired side entrance into a pale mirror. The storm has passed, but a faint mark remains in the wooden frame where Atlas forced his way inside. Walter Hensley chose not to sand it smooth. He says some scars should stay visible when they remind people to listen. Inside the chapel, the lilies have been replaced with white roses and cedar branches. The air smells clean and warm. At the front of the room rests Leonard Pierce's casket beneath the flag of the United States, no longer hidden beneath another man's identity. His Army service portrait stands beside it. In the photograph, Leonard is young, straight-backed, and smiling as though the future has not yet asked anything difficult of him. The room is not full, but it is not empty. Nurses from St. Matthew's sit beside volunteers from the Veterans Shelter. 2 retired soldiers have driven more than 100 miles to attend. Deputy Rebecca Shaw stands near the rear wall in a dark blue dress uniform. Walter waits by,